Everybody, happy Friday. We're back with another live edition of the Ad Podcast. Today, I have a super exciting guest for you guys. Joe McKinney is the Chief Growth Officer for the Board of Innovation, a brand consultancy that helps brands and agencies navigate the complexity of marketing in the age of AI transformation. She's also the Chief Marketing Officer of Elimine Technology, an AI-powered wearable neurotech for faster sleep on demand, which is super exciting. I can't wait to get into that because I definitely suffer from bouts of sleeplessness. So I'm excited to learn more on there. And prior to that, she was Chief Executive Officer of the Burns Group, which is a top brand consultancy, and was with them for over 8 years and helped steward them into their successful acquisition. So Joe, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Excited to talk to you. So many different hats and topics to discuss.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I think you have two amazing, you have a great background, but two super prevalent topics, which are on the top of everybody's minds, which is kind of how wearables and big data and this whole all these devices, I've got an Oura ring on, I've got a Garmin, there we go, I interviewed the chief marketing officer of Skull Candy recently, and he showed me some of the amazing things that are like these little earphones are going to become computers on their own soon. Wearables are an exciting space. And then of course, you guys are helping brands really talk about transformation in the age of AI. We're going to drill down to a very specific component of AI marketing, which I was able to read a background piece that you published on LinkedIn that's getting a lot of traction, which is the idea of how do we optimize our marketing in the world of marketing to agents versus humans. And the first time I heard about this concept was at Shelley Steckler's breakfast at CES this year. The idea that we're not that far away from bots marketing to bots or people marketing to bots, et cetera. And I think yours is the first use case where I've actually heard people start to talk about the tactical versus the concept. So I'm excited to dig into that. So before we go into the meat of it, though, there's a lot of people who tune into this podcast who are interested in different areas of the marketing and the agency world. So I love to hear about people's origin stories as well, too. So where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? And how'd you get in this crazy industry?
Yeah, thank you. Interesting. So I grew up outside of New York City in a suburb of the city. My parents are teachers. So not really growing up, I would say, in a business-oriented environment. I went to Cornell University and actually got recruited at Cornell by Gray Advertising. So I started my career at Gray in their account management training program on Procter & Gamble. So
wow, straight to P&G.
Yeah, P&G, and it was awesome. I mean, I will say I learned so much at the very early stage of my career, and I'm probably one of those lucky people whose first job turned into something that I both really enjoyed doing and was good at. So I've spent most of my career in advertising, one client-side stint in Europe working for Mondelez, but mostly a career agency person, and joined Burns Group. I was actually there for, I think, 13 years total. I had joined Burns Group right after I moved back to the US from living in Europe for a number of years, and joined to start their brand consultancy side. So joined as Chief Strategy Officer to build out that practice, and then became Chief Executive Officer of that company. So I was with them for quite some time. That agency was sold to Tom Bras last year. So, I really thought it was actually, in general, the right time for very seasoned leaders to be really thinking about transformation in a larger way. Having been an operator within an ad agency and with an awesome peer group of other leaders, there's a lot of change that has been affecting the ad agency model, the marketing model for a long time. But and certainly I've lived through a lot of those transformations, but a few years ago really started experimenting with generative AI and thinking about where is this really going? And what is it going to mean to marketing? What's it going to mean to the business model of an ad agency? So I left Burns Group and really said I was going to spend the next year devoting myself to a couple different things. I wanted to take a practitioner role on the marketing side while simultaneously really dig into generative AI and what it might mean in the business. And I'm definitely someone who loves to learn in general, but I also felt really strongly that only really seasoned people should be on the front lines of thinking about how are we going to apply this technology to our work. I mean, I feel like I've spent my career understanding really great human work on the ad agency side of the business and on the marketing side of the business. You know, I know what great creativity looks like. I know what a great insight looks like. I know innovation when I see it and strategy. And who better to judge the potential and the capability of a new technology that's going to affect all those spaces than someone who really understands the human side of the business. So that's really, I think, why I've leaned in so hard and so with so much experimentation very early on. And I was lucky to join up with BOI, who had also made a massive transition into AI before most of the consultancy side of the business had. So they were really leading the way and building out some of the earliest capabilities with larger Fortune 500 global companies. So I've been working with them for a year at the same time as working as Chief Marketing Officer of Elamind, helping build and launch that brand. So it's been a really great last year in terms of flexing my muscles and my experiences in brand new ways and learning a whole lot of new things. And I think it's like really important to do that in your career at multiple stages. I was definitely ready not to be a CEO and to be more of a practitioner for a while. And I'm really, really enjoying that for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, I love that. So many of the people who I've been talking to who were leaders inside of their organizations, whether it was on the agency or even, chief marketing officers who are leading big teams.
Yeah.
A lot of times they find themselves more managers than practitioners. They're not doing the thing that got them into the industry that they love. I always find it interesting, especially with chief creative officers. It's like, no matter how good you become at being an artist and becoming a creator, and somebody that births ideas and puts them into the world, the more successful you are in that, the less people want you to do that, and the more they want you to build
Yeah.
creative teams and manage creative people. And it makes sense, if you are excelling in your career, you give people more responsibility and more oversight of the organization. But that's ultimately not why a lot of people got into the business and do the things that they love to do.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, great teachers become administrators. And I would say this is across almost every industry. The things that made you great about your job don't necessarily prepare you for the next job in many ways. And I would say a CEO role is that fully. It's an entirely different job, and it's a very lonely job in many ways within an organization. And I do think getting back into practice at here and there throughout your career is really important. And I think particularly now, I've got a great network of really seasoned leaders across a lot of different types of businesses that I really enjoy talking to. And I've been, I think, really evangelizing for everyone to take this opportunity, take this moment to really think about how this new technology is going to change and alter the work that they do. How can they lead ethically through that change? And where do they fit in that kind of transformation? Are they passive in the drive, or are they going to be in the driver's seat in their own work, in their own time? So yeah, it's been a really, really interesting time from that perspective.
Love it. So you've taken a year to really deep dive into both being a practitioner as leading a brand of a growing wearables company that's focused on AI, both inside of its product, but I imagine quite a bit in the marketing.
Yeah.
And then also working as a consultant, helping brands realize their own transformation journeys. What are some of the most exciting things that you're seeing? And then we'll get into some other questions about what's maybe scaring you.
I think, right. I think it's so hard to answer that question without thinking about both sides. I have equal parts attraction and avoidance, I would say, in so many aspects of the business. First of all, I care deeply about humans and their creativity, their minds, their ability to, you know, create the life that they want to do. And certainly there's some threatening aspects of this technology as it relates to the future, and in a lot of ways. And so wanting to keep my mind focused on that as well. I'm really fortunate right now because I'm working with a lot of really interesting leaders in really interesting companies who are also very committed, I think, to applying technology in a way that amplifies human strengths and human power without thinking about replacing it. And one of the core things I feel like has happened in the last couple of years, if I think about where the conversation started with AI and where it is right now, the last 2 years, everyone you talk to has been really experimental, trying out lots of things. They have everyone in the organization trying lots of things, but it's mostly been about efficiency, not around thinking about how do I completely change the way I think or the way I work, because I now have this new powerful technology that I can incorporate. And I think, I'm seeing, obviously, if I look at the work that ad agencies are doing, I look at the work that marketers are doing, I look at the work that I'm doing as a marketing leader, and the work of the companies that I'm consulting with in marketing and innovation and strategy, the last couple of years very much around applying the technology to the ways people are already working. Where I get most excited is actually moving way past that conversation to saying, if I was building out a company today from scratch, or if I was thinking about being a brand strategist, a brand innovator, a brand marketer today for the first time, how would I conceive of that? And what would my process look like? And I think that's where things start to get really interesting when we think about how do we apply AI to the most complex parts of the business, complex parts of the business that we've known historically as humans, we've had hard time solving on our own. When we apply AI there and we think about growth rather than efficiency, I think we start to unlock a lot of really interesting things. And that's what gets me excited today. The capabilities that BOI is building in combination with a lot of our clients are really growth oriented. They're really about changing the game. They're really about changing the way we work. But it's also about supporting human talent, human strengths, and supporting that with technology that does the things that we don't do very well, rather than using it to replace the things that we can do easily. Does that make
Yeah, I
sense?
love it. Does it makes sense from a couple of areas. So, one thing that I think about, I've heard leaders like Gary Vaynerchuk and others talk about the idea that, why would you get rid of people and replace them with AI when you can enhance people to use AI to be more efficient at a job and be a force multiplier, turn one person into the ability to do the job of 10 or do their job 10 times faster.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you point that all in the direction of growing something versus saving money and contracting? So do you think is it a mindset of like the idea of like legacy businesses that are trying to protect old business models that are already kind of, in managed decline? Or is it plugging those people into like hyper growth, hyperscalers? Like, do you think it's a corporate environment in which they kind of look at one side or the other? Or do you think size of organization, like how does that apply?
I mean, let's look at marketing as a growth function within a company to begin with, and how marketers are compensated within companies, and how much ROI is a part of the conversation. So you imagine a new technology comes, and the first thing you potentially are charged with is finding ways to use that technology to increase ROI or reduce inefficiencies or reduce headcount or improve some part of the financial model. So I don't think it's unusual. If you looked at every great technological advancement over the last 150 years, like from the steam engine to the automobile to GPS technology, the truth is when new technologies emerge, they're typically applied to existing process in a way to make it more efficient. So I think that's very logical that that's how things started. What worries me is people who are not moving past that and moving past that quickly. So I was recently out at the ANA's conference in Austin, their AI and technology conference, and listened to a couple of days of marketers standing up and talking about how they were able to reduce the cost of their ad agency by 50% or replace an entire customer support function with AI. Um, Really, if when you look at those efficiency stories, certainly we all want to do things that are helping our companies thrive and survive. I totally get that. But if you think only about efficiency and not about growth, you really are going to ultimately create greater inequality in the world and business. It's going to impact the most vulnerable people in the company to start with. And so I think like when, at least the work that we're doing, we're starting to see that shift. We're starting to see that people are leaning in more to the growth piece of it and thinking about, well, okay, if I get past this efficiency model and think about what problem could I solve differently, how could I work differently, suddenly you're opening up an opportunity that potentially creates new jobs for people or new applications or new revenue streams that didn't exist before, providing other means to drive ROI versus simply reducing costs. So it's not surprising to me that that's where the conversation has started. I'm just really ready to move beyond that and seeing more and more of that in conversations that we're having with companies today.
I love it. Could you share an example of a AI leverage for a growth opportunity versus an
Sure.
efficiency opportunity?
Sure. I was working with one of our clients, and we had started the conversation in the workstream in terms of building out AI strategy and AI capabilities as it relates to the innovation process.
Mm,
CPJ brands in general obviously really struggle to put new products into the market and have them succeed. They often, these products spend years in a pipeline development, millions of dollars invested in R&D, right, in consumer testing, and getting to better innovation ideas, more insightful innovation ideas faster, is obviously a huge of huge interest. And certainly as a company, BOI has built a lot of really exciting AI native innovation capabilities that are helping clients do that and actually create products and ideas that happen more in real time and have the ability to succeed in marketplace better than before. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the early conversations around innovation is also about like, how do we replace all the people who work in that process to get to more autonomous processes. And we were having a conversation about innovation in general, and we turned the conversation around to say, okay, let's talk about career innovators and what are the problems that we always see and how do we think about those most enduring challenges that we've never been able to solve, that we're really
mm,
smart people, we've done this really well, what haven't we been able to solve? And one of the problems that kept coming up that we were talking about quite a bit was you spend 3 years developing a new product, let's say, it goes to market, the marketplace is not the same as it was when you first landed that
mm,
when you thought about the benefits or communications, when you thought about the competitive framework or the competitors even in the market, your claims, whatever it might be, often when you get to market, that situation has changed. And it's really hard as humans to keep track of that level of volatility, right? You launch a new product, the retailer might shelf you not where you belong. They might price promote a competitor. A competitor might launch at exactly the same time with claims that are better than your claims and you had no idea. Marketing messages happen in a minute. Marketing spending happens in a minute. How do I keep my eyes on all those signals and find out ways to continuously find my way forward in a way that gives me advantages? So what we ended up building was a capability that would allow you to kind of have that always on monitoring of all those different variables, and that would proactively come to you with ideas on how to maximize your advantages in those situations. And that's a growth-oriented solution. It's a problem that humans couldn't solve alone. We're not taking anyone's job away. It's
yeah.
still humans as the decider, but it's giving us eyeballs or feelers out in the marketplace in a way that was very complicated for us to have in one interaction or one dashboard, and it's proactively helping me figure out how do I actually react and respond to that. So I think that's a great example of a growth-oriented capability. There's lots of good examples like that, but it's those kind of conversations where I think, wow, you get really excited. So instead of the conversation being about how do I put more innovations in market, the conversation is that how do I make sure the things that I'm putting in market are growing and have a sustainable life, and create opportunities for growth that allows the company to actually succeed and create more new products and that sort of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense. So essentially, instead of using antiquated research and strategy models such as focus groups or surveys, which, surveys to me are a lot of times like, Nielsen boxes. I've never met anybody who's taken one, but somehow we believe their
Someone
insights.
is. Yeah.
But yeah, someone is. But now with AI and the ability to comb all these other data sources, whether that's internal data sources or
Right.
external data
Oh,
sources, stuff like the 180 million videos that get posted to TikTok every day about people talking about what they use and what they like. Being able to synthesize that and to find white space around your product and what people are already saying, kind of making those natural inclinations of, hey, here's what you should do without having to use as much traditional first party research, but then also being able to monitor in real time, how those products are
yeah.
being received by the market instead of having to wait for some of these slower signals that we had to rely on in the
Yeah.
past. Is
I
that
think
kind of an
the big thing is the real time versus
mhm.
backwards looking. A lot of times when we see something failing in market, we're looking at historical information data versus looking at real-time signals. So that's a big one. The other piece is we're leveraging simulation. And this is one of the areas where AI
Mm.
is really fantastic, to come up with an idea on how to address a potential disadvantage in the market. There's always more than one answer. I mean, if you're a career marketer, agency, client side, whatever it might be, there's not one answer in terms of how to go forward and address a problem in the market. So being able to use AI to simulate what potential outcomes might do or the impact that they might have is also really exciting. If you remember, like years ago, we used to do kind of competitive wargaming, right? Where we'd lock ourselves in a conference room and we'd try to imagine what a brand might do in reaction to something that we did, and then how might we react. Instead, we're able to do that in real time and look at real time signals and use simulation in new ways. And I think that's just a game changer in terms of how we think and how we do things moving forward. And again, it creates more opportunity for more workflows to come rather than just making things more efficient.
Yeah, I love that. Is that kind of the idea of the digital twin? The idea that, we have this huge database of like how consumers act down to,
Yeah,
billions of data points about them now. So you can, instead of exposing a product to a focus group or a panel, you can expose it to a virtualized digital twin of those same consumers and then see how those consumers would respond to a given product or innovation or
sure.
promotion, things like
And
that.
take that idea even a step further. Imagine you're an ad agency and you create a digital twin of your company so that you're
Mm,
able to experiment with different decisions you might make in running that company and what the outcome might be.
wow.
Being able to simulate the impact of either external forces like tariffs on my clients on individual categories worth of business. How are the tariffs going to affect CPG? How are they going to affect tech? How are they going to affect this? What might that look like in terms of budget reductions in advertising across these things? And then therefore, what might that look like in terms of how I manage my business as a CEO of an ad agency? What should I be doing and putting in place? So the idea of being able to create a twin in a simulation environment, I think could work at any level. It could be exactly what you're talking about in terms of using personas and synthetic personas to imagine how someone might react to something that happens in market or how they might receive or respond to a message or to a product. But I think as business leaders, it's also a really, really powerful tool for decision making. One of the hardest things to do is to look at real-time signals and know how to react and respond. And anyone who's been a CEO or an operator in a company, large or small, knows that these are the critical watershed moments, right? So having the ability to play with variables a little bit and get a little smarter. I don't think it's going to necessarily tell you yes, no, or right or wrong, but certainly you'll be a lot more informed in ways that perhaps you couldn't be before.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I hadn't thought of the idea of, like I've heard a lot of this like digital twins and simulation as it pertains to consumer-based sampling and kind of exposing product decision making to like large clusters of virtual consumers, but I haven't thought of like actually having the ability to simulate B2B organizations in their entirety and then see how they might react to different external factors, which I think is a very actually apropos lead into the next topic that I wanted to talk about. So you wrote a really interesting piece on LinkedIn. I had an opportunity to read it today, and it's about how marketers have to start thinking about building brands, campaigns, and messaging, not with humans in mind or not humans in mind only, but also thinking about the world of agentic AI bots that are now going to be part of the decision-making process within B2B organizations for sure. We're deploying AI not just to sell things, but also to buy things.
Yeah.
I heard about this concept, bot selling to bots, at CES this year, but it was presented very much in an esoteric, like, this is coming soon to a marketing campaign near you,
Yeah.
but in kind of no level of detail or specificity on like how to actually operationalize or think about campaign planning.
Yeah.
Can you tell me how close do you think we are to this type of marketing being either as important as the human channel? Are we already there? And what are some of the key factors that marketers have to take into consideration when thinking about designing campaigns
Yeah.
for agents?
I think anyone working in marketing right now hates to predict. You know, but I think it's interesting. I think things are moving really quickly, and already we're seeing that a lot of search has moved
Mm,
to generative AI chatbots like ChatGPT. And when that happens, it means that system is shortlisting on the behalf of the person making the query versus what we typically understand and have tried to master for years in terms of SEO and Google search, right? So
mm,
I think this change is already upon us. I was looking at, you're making me want to pull up a data point that I don't have in front of me in terms of what percent of search right now. I was just reading an article about this. It was pretty surprising number in terms of the amount of search that's now going through AI versus going through traditional search channels. And what that means when you think about the traditional funnel of awareness, consideration, conversion is that I'm not in control necessarily on the awareness side of it as a brand, right? Like I could be spending good money on at all levels of the funnel, but if I'm not even shortlisted in a chat experience that's AI driven for a lot of reasons, because by the way, AI is looking for different information than traditional search is looking for as it relates to what ends up on the short list. If I'm not showing up there, or I'm not able to drive people directly to my website to make a conversion, they actually might even see a short list and purchase in app, it changes everything. So I think
mm,
we have to be thinking about marketing to AI. And I don't mean that means that we're like taking our spending on Meta and Google and instead targeting AI. I'm saying that it means that because agents are already active in how we search or how we shop and how we experience brands, even if it's small right now and growing, we have to be able to influence those systems. I've spent my career, as of a lot of people, figuring out how to influence human behavior and human choice. An agent doesn't think like a human. It doesn't look at the same information that a human does. And I think this is an additive capability, an additive process that marketers and ad agencies need to really be thinking about. How, if I have a consumer insight practice, what's my agentic insight practice? If I'm asking creative people to create breakthrough ideas that appeal to humans on an emotional level, how am I also asking them to create breakthrough ideas that will appeal to an algorithm? This is
mm,
what we're going to need to be doing. And I think it's not too early to be having this conversation. And you mentioned the post that I put on LinkedIn, and I tagged a lot of agency leaders in there. And honestly, it's because we were coming off that mirroring conference where we listened to a whole lot of talks. I mean, lots of great agencies sharing about all the ways they're applying AI to the practice of marketing, like, how they're using it in production, how they're using it in strategy, how they're using it for deep research. There was very little conversation about how they are marketing to AI. And I
Wow. Yeah.
and I really think, I mean, I left those few days saying, okay, we are missing a topic here. Like, and I hope this is on stage as a topic in Cannes, where we
Yeah.
away from the largest gathering of marketers. But, I just feel like we're remiss if we're not having this conversation. And I don't think anyone knows all the right answers, but I think you can think about treating AI as a layer in the consumer journey. That's a good starting point. And within that, it's how do you structure what you're doing on the brand for agent visibility, right? So how do we think about understanding how AI systems decide and shortlist us? And how do we then find ways to get our brand into that conversation? And there's some really simple things to be agent ready, things that people can be doing right now. And I think just as the way search grew up as an area of focus and an area of expertise, so is agentic decision making. And we've got to get everyone engaged and involved in that conversation. I don't think we're going to have all the answers right now, but again, back to simulation, we can use simulation to see how brands are showing up or where they fail to show up. And there's a lot of actually off-the-shelf tools that have recently launched. I haven't tried all of them, and the names are disappearing from my brain right now. I've got a spreadsheet I've been doing on the MarTech stack. And it literally, I just want to share this and open source it because I feel like it is literally changes on an hourly basis. If you took every aspect of marketing and you said, what's today's tech stack versus what was yesterday's? There's AI solutions standing up in yesterday's tech stack, and then there's brand new solutions every day. But this notion of seeing how you show up in agentic search is certainly something that is a hot topic of discussion, where there are some third-party tools to figure it out, but you can also figure it out partially yourself by searching for your brand in those environments and see what comes up. Like, I get very excited when I search for the brand that I'm leading Yellow Mind and see that it's coming up. If I'm searching for topics about sleep and sleep wearables, and part of that is because I'm a new brand, first of all, so I'm very content rich, and I'm working on putting content out there that isn't solely AI generated, by the way, that deep level of expertise that involves the scientists that work on the brand and their deep takes on some of the most important topics in sleep, things that ultimately I think agentic search would look for versus regular human search. So part of the process in figuring this out is thinking about what are all the deep questions that anyone who would be entering your category would be asking, and making sure that you have content out there in the world that answers those questions. Because when someone uses ChatGPT and they're in a chat environment, I mean, this is human-directed conversation, they're going to ask a question, what's the best wearable for sleep? Well, there's a lot of people competing for that answer because there's a lot of wearables. If I can have compelling content out there that talks about the difference between wearing wearable neurotech for sleep versus a wearable device like this, I can hopefully get myself into a conversation. So, I mean, that's just one example, but I think there's a lot of work to be done in this area.
Yeah, I think you hit on so many interesting areas. One is the decrease of volume in traditional SEO and traditional SEO as a tactic. I've heard clients report up to 40% decreases in search traffic.
I mean, I will say, I'm as a marketer right now on the growth side for Elamind, mastering Google and Meta right now is really hard. Getting the results that you need is really difficult. There's a lot of change happening.
A lot of change.
Yeah.
And then also, like you said, preference. Like Google has monopolized the homepage. And probably I'll still have Google as the first thing that I see, just because that's more, I think that's user behavior, like getting somebody who came of age in my generation of having Google be your homepage. That'll be a hard one to dethrone. But I will say, search wise, I'm probably 50-50 now between Google and chat, and probably going more to chat more often. Because I think Google search, the limitation is almost the endless feed of information at your fingertips.
Well, and the truth
It's
is we have hard time making decisions as
mhm.
humans, and I mean, I always say there's so many categories in the grocery store that do this to you, right? Go stand in front of the cough and cold aisle in a store. There's so
Mm,
much choice. It doesn't make it easier to know what's right for you, right?
yeah.
And the way Google works, it ranks, but and obviously someone's paying to be at the top of that list. But even so, I
Mhm.
could go deep. I could go page 2, page 3, page 4. I could see everything that potentially meets that query for ease of use. If you go to ChatGPT and you ask, it's going to narrow that for you pretty
2 or 3
significantly.
things. Yeah.
And also because it's getting to know you a little bit and know what you prioritize, not only will it shorten it, but like, for instance, if it knows in all my past behavior, I actually really prioritize sustainability over anything else in my decision making, or I really prioritize price, let's say, it's going to actually start to get better and better about serving me choices that actually meet my need without me having to go through all that research. Um, and if I ask it to show me its sources and how it got to that conclusion, it also does a good job of telling me how it got there, why it's
Mhm.
showing me what it's showing me. So it takes a lot of the work out in many ways.
Do you think also the idea that ChatGPT and some of these larger AI conversational chatbots have not been monetized the way that Google has? They are seen with more credibility, at least from the outside looking in, because there aren't the same advertising products built into the top and the bottom of the masthead, things like that.
Maybe yes, but I imagine that's going to change. I mean, we're in an arms
Sure.
race. We're in an arms race right now in AI, right? Like every big tech player is in this space wanting to be the Google of
Right.
generative AI.
Yep.
And so we'll see what happens. I can't imagine it's going to remain that way.
Yeah.
And I think there also will be premium versions. I mean,
Mm.
there already are, but
They
like
already
even
are. Yeah.
as it relates to advertising and that sort of thing. So if I can afford to have a more purist feed, I probably um,
So it'll be like paying extra turn off the ads on Netflix or Disney
potentially
Plus. Yeah. Uh-huh.
potentially. I mean, we'll see how it plays out, but it wouldn't be unusual when you think about all the other examples of that
Mhm.
in free versus paid technology, right?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be
I
surprised.
I'm
Yeah.
losing trust in SVOD now that Amazon and Disney are giving me ads whether I pay or not, right?
Well, right. Yeah. And we're all pissed about that, right? Like, yeah.
No, it's interesting. Well, the other thing that I thought was kind of, interesting, at least from the perspective of user behavior, is chat is now the authority in my search for like, what marketing conference do I want to go
Yeah.
to next week? Like, because the other thing that it does, I think, really well is it filters out stuff that is used SEO to game Google algorithms. Like,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
won't show something that is irrelevant, or it shows a lot less irrelevant things, or people who've just kind of SEO'd their sites to pop up in areas where maybe they didn't have domain authority or it wasn't useful to the search. But what's also interesting is I still go back to Google and search for the thing that chat told me to search for. So I
Yeah.
guess Google is losing mind share around non-branded, but maybe they're getting more velocity around branded search because people are finding exactly what they need, but they still need to go Google it to
Yeah.
find the link and
I mean,
get out of chat over to the next place.
this is sort of the thing. What's the transformation of the marketing funnel? Like, it is not a linear journey. I actually think it hasn't been for a while, even
Hmm.
though we might still be spending dollars as if it is. I think there's going to be this very perpetual kind of loop, is what we've been kind of calling it, where you're sensing, nudging, providing information. The truth is, and I'll use Element as an example, we get a lot of direct traffic. Um, in that way. I mean, obviously, when you're
Mm,
launching a brand new category and a brand new product and a brand new brand, like with Element, I'm not selling something that people know what it is. If I say wearable neurotech for sleep on demand, you're like, what is that?
that's a
It's not
category.
going to be an instant purchase in the sense like you're selling a new lipstick shade,
Hmm.
where I know what a lipstick is, I know where I put it on my body, and you don't need to tell me much about it. And maybe seeing in a TikTok shop is going to get me there instantly. The fact that I might learn about something like LMI through ChatGPT, I'm likely still going to go dig in more to that information. And we do see a lot of direct traffic from that perspective.
Yeah, very exciting. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the work that you guys are doing with agencies to help them focus their capabilities. Where do you think is the biggest white space right now for agencies to innovate their offerings to adopt AI and remain relevant as brands race towards the same objectives in-house?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's obviously a lot of different things that agencies need to be thinking about. I think we mentioned already their own business model, and what does that look like? They're standing up new capabilities and new practices and applying AI in that realm. And obviously, people are using AI on the agency side of the business as it relates to every aspect of the business, whether that's strategy, it's insight, as you talked about, it's creative development, production. So I think there's a lot going on there. I think the bigger question will be, when you think about the value equation between brand and agency, what should you be doing or thinking about in terms of new business models, new ways to drive value, new ways to stand up really important or exciting developments for clients or for the brands that you work on. So I don't know that it's a simple answer, but I think right now there are a few things that people really should be doing. They should be, obviously, as I had mentioned, thinking about everything that they're producing as it relates to how does it appeal to a human and how does it appeal to an algorithm. So they need to really be standing up that practice and making sure their content is really optimized for visibility and ranking in agent systems and human systems. They've got to do both. They've got to be using simulation to audit what's happening, figure out where they're working, when they're not. And I think actually there's a lot of development needed on the human side of the business as it relates to training folks within the company to think a little differently about what does it mean to be a marketer in the near term future. So how they've always thought about judging ideas based on their ability to persuade a human to do something. How are we standing up a practice where they can understand how to persuade an agent in addition to that? So I think there's a lot of work to be done there. And then I would imagine all of them are in deep conversations with their clients. There's definitely a varied level of confidence, a varied level of expertise on the client side. I think there's a lot of differences across business models. CPG brands are maybe on the forefront on some of this. There could be other categories where it's not really yet as big an issue. So I think there's a lot of different work to be done, but I would say org level transformation is really important, like thinking beyond, oh, we gave a lot of tools to people and people are playing with tools. I think we've got to get past those one-off experiments. And what happens when you've got everyone playing with lots of different tools is you're not ever really bubbling up or institutionalizing the knowledge and the change that you're driving. It's just happening in lots of little experiments. So thinking more choicefully, thinking about this more strategically, figure out who you want to be in the future, and how do we line this up around it? I mean, I know that sounds maybe kind of generic, but
No,
obviously
I love it. I
there's a
think
lot of
it's
choices to be made about the business model, not just
yeah,
about the work that an agency produces.
yeah. I think that's been an ongoing conversation that AI is only accelerating, right?
Yeah, for sure.
How should brands that market to consumers be thinking about how their messaging needs to take in agents into consideration? When I first thought about this idea of bot selling the bots, it's like,
Yeah,
okay, well, that's going to be a B2B service where, I design a AI to read the 500 spam emails that I get every single day and
yeah,
tell me which one is actually worth responding to, because I think that's a
that
big
is.
problem, right? Like yeah, like AI's gotten very aggressive on the sales side, and
Uh,
messaging is at an all-time high as far as frequency and volume. And a lot of CMOs I talk to, I remember distinctly interviewing the chief marketing officer of Spotify and asking him, how if somebody wants to meet with you, how do they break through? And he said, well, look, Dylan, the reality is there are 500 emails that I get every single day. And this was before
yeah,
COVID, right? This
yeah,
was before COVID. He said, look, I have no doubt that there is value somewhere in those 500 emails, but I don't have a realistic way to apply any sense of methodology to that. So I would rather just hit the select all delete.
well,
And that's sad for agent people who are trying to break through. and he would rely exclusively on referrals from people who he
Sure.
knew, and then that was the only way he would take net new meetings. Now, by the way, a guy who broke through and got to fly to Toronto and interview him on my podcast in his office by sending him a cold email, but that still is beside the point, right? It's like, how do you leverage, how do you stand out in a sea of sameness and a sea of spam? But I guess my question is, as we move to the idea that agents are going to actually have our credit card information, they're going to book travel, they're going to choose what hotels we stay in, they're going to potentially shop for us. As we start to empower them to make buying decisions on our behalf as consumers, how should we be thinking about? Is it similar thought process in how to apply marketing messagings to agents, or is there subtleties from B2B to B2C?
Well, I think it's going to happen both B2B and B2C. And B2B, we're
Mm,
already seeing that AI is shaping, how buyers kind of shortlist
mm,
vendors or synthesize content, as you're saying. And I would say anywhere a choice is being filtered or auto recommended, you know, agent marketing applies. So that's both on the consumer side and on the B2B side. Like you're going to have to be
mm.
thinking about it.
For sure.
I think it's going to vary by category. Like one of the interesting things I was thinking about the other day is think about in your local community, in your local home, you have your car breaks down and you're searching for a local auto repair shop, or you need to have your lawn mode and you're searching for someone. Like those kind of businesses have really relied on search to be a part of the short list that anyone would have. I'm really curious to see what happens because they're not creating content per se that would attract an agent. Like
Mm.
it's one thing when I talk about Elamine, where I'm a brand new brand and I've obviously thought about every word that's on the website and the blog that I produce and all that sort of stuff. But there's a lot of categories on the B2B side of business where people don't really produce content. Like they're a word of mouth business, that has a listing, they're in the yellow pages, or they work in a community. I'm very curious to see how that all plays out because I think it's going to be really, really difficult in many ways. If my short list requires that there's content that's out there that allows me to be shortlisted. I think things like reviews are going to be really important, like whether that's you're on Yelp or you're in Google reviews, and therefore at least you're seen as a credible alternative on a local basis. I haven't been using AI from a search standpoint in that local way in the same way. I think
Me neither.
move
Yeah,
or two. I'm
I'm
curious. This
still
conversation
using.
makes me want to go figure it out. Like to say, okay, here's my location. If I need a dry cleaner, like where am I going? Because the dry cleaner isn't competing for an algorithm right now. I can't imagine they have set that up.
Yeah,
To do
yeah,
that.
that's really smart. I think when I think about local curation, I think more about usage of portals like
Yeah.
Yelp
Right.
or Open Table
Right.
or things of that nature. So you're trusting because it's been so wrought with just generic information in kind of like traditional search like Google and
Yeah.
others. Maps with reviews or like a trusted third party like a Yelp or an Open Table or something like that becomes the go-to. But it will be interesting as agentic takes over, becomes a bridge between you and that end consumer, that end
Yeah.
search result. How
I
does
don't know
that play out?
have you played with Operator at all yet
Mm-mm.
in
What's
ChatGPT?
that?
That's one of
It's a
OpenAI
plugin.
offering that
Uh,
has is more agentic in terms of it has some autonomous capabilities to go out and complete a task for you. Not
okay.
fully, like you can't buy yet, but to test it, I live in New York City, but I always think it's interesting to test things in your own backyard to say, okay, I'm going to New York for the weekend. Find me a hotel, book me a restaurant. I mean, because I know what where I would do that. So it's a good test, right?
Yeah, so you know if it would line up to your expectations
Well,
and how well it knows you.
right. So this was a few weeks ago, so maybe it's better now. But like, it offered me like 10 different hotels that it shortlisted. They were all the same brand of hotel. Like, so
Mm,
clearly and it wasn't a hotel that I would ever have chosen. Clearly, they have done a good job in in making themselves available to the algorithm. They did something, because there's no way with the how many hotels are in New York City? Thousands and thousands. Like, to have the top 5 results be all over different parts of the city, but all be the same parent company. Like, so they clearly were doing something right there in terms of thinking about that. But anyway, it's just an example. I think, like, obviously everyone's going to get better at this, and therefore maybe it ends up all coming out in the wash in the end. But right now, I do think some company has the ability to stand up some competitive advantages now by being early at figuring this out.
Yeah, I tried the same thing with the Expedia ChatGPT plugin, and it
Yeah.
was not at all, what I would. The recommendations for my, weekend trip weren't quite up to par just
Yeah. Yeah.
yet. But I
Yeah.
think, like you said, it will continue on.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we have 10 minutes left, so I want
Okay.
to dive into some of the work that you're doing at Elamind, because I feel like that's really exciting as well. And I think kind of scratches that other side of like being a marketer at an
Yeah.
early stage company and being a CMO, but a CMO that's very tactical, not just managing teams and agencies and sending them in
I
different
wish.
directions.
Yeah. Yes. It's so interesting. I mean, we're pre-Series A brand. We launched in beta in 2024, but we started shipping on demand in January of this year, and we turned on paid Q1. So we built the brand in 2024 purely organically. Which was exciting. It was really standing up the value proposition for, as I said, a brand new category and a brand new product and a brand new brand. Sleep is a really interesting space. It is an area of deep concern that plagues every type of person globally in society. And it is also a category that has a lot of potential options, from RX drugs to OTC drugs to edibles, to supplements, to wearables, to sleep hygiene and sleep environmental products. Like, there's no shortage of innovation in sleep. But the really exciting thing about Elamind is, like, well, all of those things exist. None of them actually do what I think people really want for sleep, which is control over their sleep.
Mhm.
And so the notion of wearable neurotech that actually allows you to move your brainwave from an awake state to a sleep state is something that's never been available before, is very, very exciting to people. And in our clinical studies, it works for 76% of people. We have a 30-day money back guarantee, because it doesn't work for 100% of the people, because sleep is really complicated. But, our customers, it's really interesting. I mean, you should go to the website and read the reviews, because I think sleep is so life-changing for people. Like, it is the thing that kills your day if you don't have it. And it is a force multiplier for every aspect of health and performance if you do have it, right? So
Mhm.
it's this, like, holy grail thing. It's the number one thing we could all do to improve health. So to be able to be at the front end of putting a brand new technology on the market that actually fills a need that was never filled before, the idea to actually control sleep, which is why I landed on that value proposition of sleep on demand, versus just contributing to, I think, the category noise around fall asleep faster. We do help you fall asleep faster, but the notion more is that we are actually giving you control in that way. So it's been really, really interesting to enter a very competitive category with a brand new value proposition, and navigate all of the challenges that a pre-Series A brand needs to navigate to try to break through. And doing that at the same time where AI is completely transforming the funnel of paid marketing,
Yep.
and a lot of aspects of choice. Like, the truth is, human decision making is changing. So putting your career's worth of knowledge into launching a brand new brand is awesome, but you've got to be really nimble, and really, I always say, like, try not to act like an expert right now. Anytime I lean into what I think is any expertise, I'm proven wrong. So I think it's really the time to say, no space for experts. Let's all have a massive growth mindset about what it takes to be successful. I'm fortunate to be my collaborators at Elamind, the founding team, the CEO. I'm the only non-scientific hire in the company. Everyone does have a huge growth mindset and is really open to experimentation. We launched the brand by doing a series of Sleep with our CEO demos because we actually didn't even have product to ship to people to try. We only had a handful of
Mm.
product, and so we did press demos where we brought people to hotel rooms and put them to sleep. And
I saw some of those videos on Twitter. They were great.
yeah, so a lot of really interesting tactics, and it's been really fun. But I think I always say to the CEO of the company, I wish I was able to promise certain KPIs and outcomes, but I feel like so much is changing right now in marketing, and it's really just about being nimble and pivoting and figuring out as we go. So I'm deep into experimentation mode, trying lots of different things. I'm also trying a lot of AI powered tools and capabilities to figure out how do I supplement and augment what is a very obviously limited investment in bodies. And I don't have a retained agency in the way that you would when you get to be a larger size. So it's certainly been really interesting to both be a marketer and be someone helping transform marketing on both sides of the business, and sort of doing that simultaneously.
I love it. Can you tell me a little bit about the innovation?
Yeah.
Who are the founders? Where did this technology come from? And why did they decide it was worth bringing into the world?
Well, the interesting thing, the original discovery was there were a couple of scientists involved in it, but Ed Boyden, who is the head of neuroscience at MIT, the original discovery is an algorithm that allowed them to actually read a brainwave and in real time stimulate that brainwave to get it to a desired state. That algorithm went into clinical testing across a lot of different health conditions, from essential tremor to sleep to attention, memory, you name it, because the idea of neuromodulation to improve health versus having to take a drug, which is a chemical that works systemically, but to actually modulate the brain to get it into a better health state is a very, very exciting area in general, drug-free,
Yeah.
no side effects. So that discovery was made a number of years ago. The idea to commercialize the sleep product, that was one of the first clinical studies that came back that you could actually improve sleep onset, which is speed the time it takes someone to fall asleep by moving their alpha wave. It basically targets the alpha wave, which is the wave when you have your eyes closed and you're trying to go to sleep and you're having the racing mind. That's
The
your alpha
monkey
wave.
mind.
Yes. So what it does is stimulates that wave. It sounds like we use acoustic neurostimulation, so it's through a bone conductor in your forehead. We're reading the brain wave through a wearable EEG. It took 5 years and $10 million of funding to figure out how to put an EEG into a headband before we launched. And the actual science is moving that brainwave from an awake state to a sleep state. And when we do that, we can improve sleep onset. So in clinical studies, 76% of people fall asleep faster, on average 48% faster, and up to 74% faster. So, and I will find my experience of wearing it is it interrupts that monkey brain that you're talking about, that in a really, really interesting way. So the science is really interesting. And I think it has obviously far-reaching benefits and potential applications to a lot of other health states, which are under study right now.
Nice. And then what's the price point for the consumer right now? Is it kind of the ultra luxury, or is it what's
$349.
that's not
With
bad for
a 30-day money back guarantee. No, I think
people pay a lot of money for good sleep, whether it's through the most expensive bed, whether it's expensive gym trials, and monitoring your diet. I mean, a lot. This is a category that's of immense interest to me, just because I go through different cycles. I go through great cycles where I have really great sleep, and sleep for 8 to 10 hours. Then I go through kind of hyper scaling moments I would consider in my career, where I'm just I'm very engaged. I'm not unhappy. I don't feel stressed in the normal term, but I just feel on. And when I'm that way, I also tend to have low sleep cycles. I'll wake up at 2:30 in the morning with an idea, and then be like, okay, I'm not even gonna consider waking up until 4:15. But if this continues on until 4:15, I'll just get up and I will go for a run and deal with the ramifications later, and then I'll just sleep really good the next day, right?
Well, The best thing for me for L-Mind, I have more of the middle night awakenings. You can restart sleep. So you wear it and you just press a button and it will restart the cycle, which is awesome. And,
Wow.
when you look at our earliest customers, there's a lot of people who are shift workers, like doctors, nurses, pilots, menopausal women, because middle of the night awakenings is a big issue there. New parents who get woken up and then can't fall back to sleep. People, business travelers. I mean, we're selling so many to people. I wore it on a plane, an overnight flight, and slept very well. And the guy next to me was, in the morning, he's like, "What is that? Can I have it?" Jet lag, things like that. So yeah, I think we've really made the brand accessible from a pricing perspective. And a lot of people are wearing sleep wearables, but they are reading sleep. They're reading sleep based on movement and respiration. We are reading sleep based on actual brain activity, but we're writing sleep. We're giving you the ability to actually turn on sleep. And I think, not instant, it's not a switch that turns on sleep, but, I think everyone's used to read devices as it relates to sleep, not write devices. And I would say writing sleep is really interesting. And the way we're reading sleep is very different than all the other wearables.
Yeah, I was gonna say your reading must have different levels of accuracy and data collection because I've dealt with these issues in the past. I will have a night where I know for a fact that I did not sleep like well for the entire night, and then I'll look at my wearable and it'll show that I didn't have great sleep, but it won't tell it like it won't be like you didn't sleep at all last night.
Well, because if you were lying still, like I'll lie
Right.
down on the couch and my ring might think I'm actually sleeping. But when we're measuring brain activity, and actually it's funny, our neuroscientists have written a blog for us, and I keep saying we need to stand up a lot of examples of this because most of our earliest buyers are early tech adopters. So they wear a Whoop, they wear an Aura, they wear an Apple Watch, they're wearing L-Mind, and they're so interesting, and they're providing this information back to us. They're like reaching out to customer support to say, L-Mind's telling me this, this is telling me that. We're measuring very different things. Measuring your brain activity is actually how you know you're sleeping. And I was just out in Austin last week at the big biohacking conference, and huge, thousands of people, really loud, chaotic conference. We did these demos where we put people to sleep, like literally on a lawn chair in the middle of all this chaos. And I didn't think anyone would really fall asleep. Like the thing I did was, try to nap, we dare you. And I said, if you fall asleep based on the brain activity, you'll get $50 off an L-Mind. And I'm like, I don't care how you're self-reporting sleep. I'm going to be able to see if you did fall asleep because I can read your brain activity. And we actually had multiple people fall asleep, which it shocked me. It was so loud. They would show up with a big cup of coffee and still they were falling asleep. But I kept saying to people, no, I don't care if you tell me you're sleeping or not. I'm looking at this and I know you were or you weren't. Like that's the measurement here. So
Looking at the data.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool. Well, I feel like we could have done two separate shows based on the two different lives that you're living right now, but both extremely interesting and fascinating. Well, Joe, thank you so much for spending some time with me and my audience today. Really appreciate to have gotten to know you and look forward to continuing conversations. And we'll have to touch base again on maybe both topics as both of these areas continue to develop and grow quickly. But if folks want to find out more about what you're working on and connect with you directly, where's the best place for them to find out more information?
Probably LinkedIn. You can find me there, Joe McKinney. And thank you for inviting me. I think you need an L-Mind, and then we should have a follow-up to see how that goes. And then we can get together in a few months and see if any of the predictions on the AI side of this are actually true. I keep saying anyone who's willing to be recorded about what they think is happening in AI should be forced to watch that recording 6 months or a year from now and see if they were right. That would be the best podcast a year from now.
I like it. Well, there hasn't been a podcast, I don't think, in recent times without a conversation around it. So I appreciate your expertise, and the work you're doing is fascinating. So thanks again for spending some time sharing with us. And on that note, wherever you guys are following along at home today, if this is your first time seeing the show and you want to hear more conversations with marketing leaders, agency presidents, those types, don't forget to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. If you give us an honest review, that is the easiest way for us to find a larger audience. So go ahead and do that. And last but not least, if there's someone out there in your life who is not getting enough sleep or can't get enough sleep or wants sleep on demand, somebody you know in marketing world who is a leader that needs to deal with some of these obstacles and the challenging landscape that we're all trying to make sense of, or if there is somebody inside of agency land who's trying to figure out how to AI proof their business models, don't forget to share the show. And with that, Joe, we'll let you go, and we'll